How's it going, church? Pastor Caleb here. Hope you're having a fantastic week. Wanted to take a moment just to remind you that this weekend is the finale of our At the Movies series. We've had an incredible 2 weeks, but we have saved the best for last.
Oh my God.
Miami County, 911.
Oh my, somebody broke into my home. Somebody broke into my home and shot my wife.
Are they still in there?
I don't know.
Okay, what's the address?
Please hurry, please hurry.
Okay. What are you seeing?
My wife she's got 2 shots to her head. There's blood everywhere. Oh my God. Sir, please.
February 16th, 2026, 2:30 in the morning, Tip City, Ohio. Every single light on Cunningham Court is off. The streets are empty, the kind of empty that only happens in small towns in the middle of the night, when the whole world seems to have agreed to stop moving for a few hours. There is not a car on the road, not a person on a sidewalk, not a sound except the wind. Inside a house on that quiet street, 2 little girls are asleep in their beds. Their golden doodles are settled in for the night. The home looks like every other home on the block. Ordinary, still, safe. And then a phone rings at Miami County 911. Oh my God. Somebody broke into my home. Somebody broke in my home and shot my wife. That was the voice of Caleb Flynn, worship pastor, church leader, former American Idol contestant, husband, father, and according to prosecutors, the man who had sent a 5-word text message exactly 1 hour and 43 minutes earlier. It's almost done. 2 hours after that text was sent, Ashley Flynn was dead. Before we go any further into this investigation, if you are new here, welcome to True Crime Vault. We are the channel that goes beyond the headlines and tells you the full story. Every detail, every piece of evidence, every question the other videos are not asking. If this case matters to you, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on that notification bell so you never miss an investigation. And if you want to support this work, hit that like button. It takes 2 seconds and it means everything to this channel. Drop a comment below and tell us what you already know about this case. Now, let's get into it. To understand what happened inside that house on Cunningham Court, you have to understand the world that surrounded it. Because Tip City is not the kind of place where you expect a story like this to unfold. It is a small, tight-knit community about 15 miles north of Dayton, the kind of town where people wave to each other from their front porches, where the streets go quiet at night without anyone feeling nervous about it, where neighbors know each other's names and show up when someone needs help. It is the kind of town where, when something terrible happens, the whole community feels it at the same time, where a school shooting, a house fire, a sudden loss does not stay contained to one family. It ripples outward and touches everyone who has ever walked those streets and called them home. Ashley Flynn was woven into that community in a way that very few people manage to be. She was 37 years old, a mother of 2 young daughters, a substitute teacher for Tip City schools, a teacher with LifeWise Academy, a nonprofit that brings Bible-based lessons to public school students, and perhaps most visibly in the daily life of the community, the volleyball coach for the 7th grade girls at Tippecanoe Middle School. Now, when someone dies, people say kind things. That is just what happens. You hear the eulogies and the tributes and the social media posts, and sometimes, if you are honest with yourself, you know that grief softens the edges of memory in ways that are not always entirely accurate. People become saints in death in ways they never were in life, and there is something understandable and even merciful about that. But the things people said about Ashley Flynn were different. They were specific. They were detailed. They came from students who were 12 and 13 years old and who had no reason to perform grief for the cameras. A 7th grader named Jocelyn Frost stood in front of news cameras in the days after Ashley died and described her coach in terms that cut straight through everything. "She was more than just a coach to me," Jocelyn said, "like family. And she was. I loved her so much." She remembered Ashley's smile, the way it warmed up an entire room without Ashley having to say a single word. She remembered that Ashley helped her players become better people, not just better volleyball players. She remembered the Oreo lessons. Ashley would use a cookie as a teaching tool, explaining that the crunchy outside represented the things they needed to work on, and the creamy center represented the things they did well. A simple lesson, a memorable one, the kind that sticks with a 13-year-old for years. She's just someone I really want to grow up to be like. That is not a line you deliver for a news camera. That is something a child says when the person they are talking about genuinely changed how they see the world. Ashley's pastor described her as one of the kindest souls to ever grace this planet. And within the context of how people talk about those they have lost, that statement carries weight, because it is not just a general expression of grief. It is a description of a specific quality that people who knew Ashley experienced consistently over time in their real daily interactions with her. She showed up. That was the thing that kept coming up over and over again in the days and weeks after her death. Ashley Flynn showed up for her students, for her players, for her church, for her daughters, even when, as would later become apparent, things in her own life and her own home were carrying a weight that most people around her did not fully understand. Her family, in a statement released in the days after her death, said that Ashley brought endless light to our world and that they were trying to navigate the immense loss. The simplicity of those words, the way they describe not just grief, but the experience of a world suddenly going darker, says something about what it meant to be near Ashley Flynn when she was alive. Now, Caleb Flynn, 39 years old, Ashley's husband, the father of their 2 daughters, a man who had, by any external measure, built an impressive life in this community. He had served as a worship arts pastor and worship director at 2 different churches between 2010 and 2021. He was comfortable on a stage. He was comfortable being looked at, being listened to, commanding a room with his voice. That comfort had roots that went further back than his church ministry, because here is something that a lot of people outside of Tip City did not know about Caleb Flynn. The man had auditioned for American Idol, season 12, back in 2013. He was described on the show as a music pastor who was born to sing. He stood in front of the judges and the cameras with the kind of ease that most people never have in front of any audience, let alone a national television one. During his American Idol interview, Caleb spoke about his wife. "I love my wife more than anything," he said. "She is very, very pretty. I just love her. I'm just a normal person who absolutely loves to sing more than anything in the world." He even compared Ashley to Carrie Underwood. "I promise you, if my wife dyed her hair blonde, she would look just like her," he said. Those words are worth sitting with for a moment, given what we know now. By the time of Ashley's death, Caleb was no longer serving as a church pastor in an official capacity. He was working as the vice president of sales at Richard D. Smith & Sons in Tip City, but he had not stepped back from church life. He and Ashley both attended Christian Life Center in Dayton, Ohio, where he continued to serve on the worship team. Every Sunday morning, Caleb Flynn stood at the front of that congregation, microphone in hand, leading people in worship. Praise, devotion, the language of faith and love and commitment. The whole church looked up to him, and from where anyone in that community was standing, the Flynn family had it together. They were active members of a church they loved, surrounded by a community that showed up for them, raising 2 daughters in a town where that kind of life was still possible. They were the kind of family that other families look at and feel a quiet warmth about, the reassurance that the things worth building are still being built. But underneath that surface, something had been fracturing for longer than anyone outside that marriage fully understood. There was another woman at Christian Life Center. Her name was Aldiyar Seitkassymov. She was a worship leader at the church, which meant that every single Sunday morning, she and Caleb stood on the same stage, side by side, leading that congregation in song, in front of the church family, in front of their friends, in front of Ashley. According to what investigators would later uncover, Caleb Flynn and Aldiyar Seitkassymov had been involved in an affair. Take a moment with that. This man, a pastor, a husband, a father, standing on that stage every Sunday next to the woman he was involved with, singing about love and faithfulness and devotion, while his wife sat in the building watching, trusting, believing that the man she had built her life with was exactly who he showed the world he was. That is not a momentary lapse. That is not a mistake made in a single weak moment. That is a sustained, deliberate deception carried out in the most visible possible setting, in front of everyone who mattered to both of them for months. Aldiyar Seitkassymov's name surfaced publicly in the days following Caleb's arrest, and the circumstances of her departure from Christian Life Center became part of the story in ways that the church itself seemed unable to fully explain. Pastor Jordan Hansen, the lead pastor at Christian Life Center, addressed his congregation in the aftermath of the arrest. In remarks that were captured and shared widely online, Hansen confirmed that Botner, listed as a worship leader on the church's website, had submitted her resignation without explanation. "I want to inform you that Aldiyar Botner, one of our worship leaders, submitted her resignation without explanation," Hansen told his congregation. "We do not know why." The church's website was updated following the announcement. Botner's page was removed. Online, speculation connected her name to Caleb Flynn, though the specific nature of her role in the events surrounding Ashley's death has not been officially detailed by investigators in public statements. What has been confirmed is this. In the hours leading up to Ashley Flynn's death, Caleb was in sustained, escalating communication with an unidentified woman through text messages and through encrypted messaging applications. That communication did not slow down as midnight approached. It accelerated. More texts, more back and forth, the frequency increasing as the night got later. And then, at 12:42 in the morning, a message went out from Caleb Flynn's phone to an unidentified recipient. 5 words. "It's almost done." 1 hour and 43 minutes later, Ashley Flynn was dead inside her own home. Now let us walk through the night itself, because the sequence of events matters. Caleb told police that he had been sleeping separately from Ashley that night because he had a cough and did not want to disturb her. According to his account, he was not in the master bedroom when the incident occurred. He stated that he heard something. The account he gave to the 911 dispatcher painted a picture of a man who discovered his wife had been shot by an intruder who had apparently entered through the garage. The 911 call is worth examining carefully because the way a person speaks in moments of genuine crisis tells you things that are difficult to perform deliberately. "Oh my God. Somebody broke into my home. Somebody broke in my home and shot my wife." The dispatcher asked whether the intruder was still inside. Caleb said he did not know. He said the door to the garage was wide open. He described Ashley as having 2 shots to her head and blood everywhere. He called her name. He described checking on his daughters, telling the dispatcher they were in their room, still sleeping, not woken by what had occurred. "Ashley, Ashley, baby, please." When officers arrived at the scene, they found signs of forced entry at the side door of the garage. Ashley Flynn was found in the master bedroom with at least 1 gunshot wound to the head. 2 shell casings were found on the floor near the foot of the bed. She was pronounced deceased at the scene. Caleb Flynn was taken to the Tip City Police Station voluntarily in the early morning hours, around 4:30 a.m., after Ashley's mother arrived to take the girls. He agreed to speak with detectives. The content of what he told them that morning has not been released publicly. Now here is where the case shifts. Tip City Police were the lead agency on this investigation, but within a short period of time, this case was no longer just a local matter. The FBI came in, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation came in, the Miami County Sheriff's Office came in, the Miami County Prosecutor's Office came in. When that many agencies converge on a case in a small town like Tip City, that is not standard procedure for a home invasion gone wrong. That level of resource deployment tells you something about what investigators believed they were actually looking at from a very early stage. Police Chief Gregory Adkins spoke publicly during the investigation in terms that were measured but deliberate. "The family and community deserve a thorough, professional, and compassionate investigation into this very sensitive matter," Adkins said. He acknowledged that the investigation might not be moving as fast as residents wanted to see, but he was clear that his department was following the evidence. Not hunches, not community pressure, not the initial story that had been presented to them. "We are collecting all the evidence and we are following the evidence," he said. They were. The first thing that fell apart was the forced entry. Investigators examined the physical evidence at the scene. The open garage door, the points of entry, the layout of the house, and they were not finding what they would expect to find if a stranger had forced their way in, committed a violent act, and left. The scene had a quality that investigators described in the criminal complaint in very specific terms. Officers were led astray by the staging of the crime scene. Staging. That word is important. Staging is not the same as a messy scene or an ambiguous scene. Staging refers to the deliberate rearrangement or manipulation of a crime scene to create a false narrative about what happened. It requires knowledge of what the scene needs to look like. It requires access to the scene. It requires time. It requires someone who was already inside that house. And then the digital evidence came back. Investigators pulled Caleb Flynn's phone records. What they found was a documented pattern of sustained communication with an unidentified woman in the hours leading up to Ashley's death, through standard text messaging and through encrypted messaging applications. The communication escalated as midnight approached, more frequent, more intense. And then there was the attempt to erase it. Caleb had deleted messages from his device, thought they were gone, thought that whatever had been said in those conversations in the hours before his wife died was now permanently inaccessible. Digital forensics does not work that way. Investigators recovered every deleted conversation and placed them into evidence. The deletion itself became one of the central charges against him: tampering with evidence. An active, deliberate attempt to destroy a documented record of communications in the period immediately surrounding his wife's death. And at the center of all of it, that text, 12:42 in the morning. It's almost done. Prosecutors looked at those 5 words and made an argument that would become foundational to the case against Caleb Flynn. Whoever received that message already knew what was being referred to. This was not an ambiguous phrase sent in a random context. This was a status update. A communication to someone who had been in contact all night, who knew what had been set in motion, who was waiting. This was not, prosecutors argued, a crime of sudden rage or lost control. This was planned, communicated, coordinated, and the digital record, recovered from what Caleb believed was a deleted folder, documented that coordination in his own words. 3 days. That is how long it took from the morning Ashley was found to the moment police made their move. On February 19, 2026, Caleb Flynn was arrested. He was charged with 1 count of murder, 2 counts of felonious assault with a deadly weapon, and 2 counts of tampering with evidence. The arrest sent shockwaves through Tip City and through the broader Christian community that had known and respected Caleb Flynn for years. The same stage presence, the same voice, the same man who had stood in front of a congregation every Sunday and led them in worship, now sitting in a jail cell at Miami County Jail. His arraignment took place on February 20th via video. Judge Samuel Huffman presided. When given the opportunity to speak, Caleb Flynn's words were these: "I just want to take care of my daughters. I'm not a risk." His attorney, L. Patrick Mulligan of Mormon and Mulligan, entered a not guilty plea on his behalf and issued a statement expressing concern about the speed of the investigation. "We are both disappointed and concerned about the short timeline and seeming rush to judgment in this case," Mulligan said. Caleb Flynn entered a plea of not guilty this morning and looks forward to defending this case. Bond was set at $2 million. Flynn remained in custody. Now here is the development that separates this video from every other video you have watched about this case. Because this happened yesterday, March 18th, 2026, and most of the coverage you have seen was produced before this. A Miami County grand jury convened and returned an indictment against Caleb Flynn. Not the 5 counts he was originally charged with. 11. The grand jury indicted Caleb Flynn on 11 separate counts: aggravated murder, 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of felonious assault, 3 counts of tampering with evidence, and 2 misdemeanor counts of intimidation of an attorney, victim, or witness in a criminal case. Let us be precise about what that escalation means. The original charges were serious, but aggravated murder in Ohio carries a different weight entirely. It is the most severe charge in the state's criminal code, and it can carry the death penalty under certain circumstances. The fact that a grand jury reviewed the evidence and determined that the facts supported not just murder, but aggravated murder, tells you something significant about what investigators presented to them. The 3 tampering with evidence charges, up from 2, suggest that the forensic investigation uncovered additional instances of attempted evidence destruction beyond what was originally documented. What those additional instances involve has not been publicly detailed. And then there are the 2 counts of intimidation of an attorney, victim, or witness in a criminal case. Those charges are striking. They mean that investigators have documented evidence suggesting that after his arrest, while awaiting trial, Caleb Flynn allegedly made attempts to influence or intimidate someone connected to the case. Who that person is, a witness, an attorney, someone else with knowledge of the events, has not been disclosed. But the existence of those charges tells you that the investigation did not stop the moment he was in custody. It continued. and it found things. Flynn's attorney has said there are a series of motions that will need to be filed on his client's behalf. The defense has not yet publicly addressed the expanded charges. Earlier in the case, the defense team had filed a motion seeking restricted access to case filings and discovery materials, citing the heightened national and international publicity the case had received. The prosecution objected to those restrictions, arguing that there needed to be clear and convincing evidence of the need to restrict access to public records. The lower court no longer has jurisdiction in the matter following the grand jury indictment, and the case now moves to Miami County Common Pleas Court. Caleb Flynn is scheduled to be arraigned on the grand jury indictment in Common Pleas Court. He remains in custody at Miami County Jail on the $2 million bond. And through all of this, the community of Tip City has been doing what communities do when something breaks them open. Within days of Ashley's death, a local woman named Sarah Kaler started taking orders for handmade shirts. They said, "Live like Ashley." Within days, more than $2,500 had been raised, all of it directed to the two daughters Ashley left behind. People who had never met Ashley were reaching out, asking what quotes of hers could be printed on the shirts. Strangers finding a way to hold a woman they never knew. And online, a GoFundMe created to support the girls has raised nearly $175,000 from approximately 1,400 donors, far surpassing its original goal of $50,000. The community of Tip City, and people far beyond it who heard this story and felt it land somewhere deep, have made sure that whatever financial burden falls on those two little girls and whoever is now raising them, it will not fall alone. Christian Life Center held a celebration of life for Ashley. It was originally planned as a public service. After Caleb's arrest, the church announced that it would instead be a private, invitation-only gathering. Out of respect, they said, for all the families involved. The people who loved Ashley came together in the only way that was left to them, to remember her the right way, not for how she died, for how she lived. City Councilman Mike Polensek from a neighboring community expressed what many felt when he reflected on the broader tragedy. The daughters didn't just lose a mom, now they've lost a dad. There is no simpler or more devastating way to say it. Those two little girls went to sleep on the night of February 15th in a home with both their parents. They woke up into a world that looked nothing like the one they had fallen asleep in. No mother at the breakfast table, no mother at their games, no mother to call when life gets hard. And their father, the man who was supposed to be their foundation, the man who stood at the front of a church every Sunday and talked about love and faith and commitment, behind bars, facing the most serious criminal charges that Ohio law provides for. They did not ask for any of this. They were asleep in their rooms. Their golden doodles were with them. They were safe, the way children are supposed to be safe in their own homes. And there is one more thing to address before this investigation closes, because it sits at the center of this story, whether it is comfortable to say it out loud or not. Ashley knew something was wrong. In the weeks and months before her death, she had been opening up to close friends. She told the people she trusted that things in her marriage were not right. She was struggling. Something between her and Caleb had shifted and she could feel it. She was carrying something heavy, and it was getting heavier. The very last message Ashley sent to a close friend contains words that have stayed with everyone who has heard them. "I can't anymore. Hear me out." Those are not the words of someone having a rough week. Those are not the words of someone going through a temporary rough patch that will smooth itself out by morning. Those are the words of a woman who has been holding on for a long time, who has been carrying more than anyone around her fully understood, and who has finally reached a point where the weight of it is simply too much to continue carrying alone. The people around Ashley heard those words. They knew she was hurting. They knew something was wrong. And not one of them, not a single person who loved her, could have seen what was coming. Because nothing in the ordinary language of human struggle, nothing in the vocabulary of marital difficulty and personal pain, prepares you for what the end of that particular story turned out to be. Which is why what Ashley said in those final weeks matters beyond her own story. When someone you love tells you they cannot do it anymore, stop. Put everything else down. Listen. Really listen. Not the kind of listening where you are already planning what you are going to say next. The kind of listening where the only thing happening is that you are fully present with a person who needs someone to actually receive what they are handing you. Because sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the person standing in front of you saying they cannot do it anymore is telling you something more urgent than the ordinary words suggest, and you do not always get another chance to respond. Ashley Flynn deserved better. Her daughters deserved better. The tight-knit community of Tip City, Ohio, the kind of place where people wave from their front porches and neighbors know each other by name, and nobody used to think twice about leaving a door unlocked, that community deserved better. What comes next is a legal process that will play out in Miami County Common Pleas Court over the months ahead. The arraignment on the 11-count indictment is scheduled. Pre-trial motions will be filed. Discovery will be exchanged. And eventually, assuming the case does not resolve through other means, there will be a trial. And the full picture of what happened inside that house on Cunningham Court in the early hours of February 16, 2026, will become part of the permanent public record. We will be here for every development, every hearing, every piece of evidence that enters the public domain, because Ashley Flynn's story deserves to be told completely, because those two daughters deserve to have their mother remembered for who she actually was, and because the truth, however long it takes to establish fully and formally, is the only thing that does justice to a life like Ashley's. The man who stood at the front of that church every Sunday morning, the worship leader, the former American Idol contestant, the husband, the father, is now facing 11 counts including aggravated murder in the death of his wife. His daughters are being raised by someone else. His community is still trying to make sense of something that resists making sense. And Ashley Flynn, who spent her life showing up for other people, who coached volleyball and stayed late, and poured into her students and her church and her daughters, who told her friend she could not do it anymore, and meant it more deeply than anyone around her understood. She deserved so much more than the ending she got. Live like Ashley. Show up the way she showed up. Love the way she loved. And pay attention to the people standing right in front of you, before it is too late. If this investigation moved you, if you believe Ashley Flynn's story deserves to be heard and remembered, please subscribe to True Crime Vault. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. Drop a comment below and tell us what you think happens next in this case. What part of this story hit you hardest, and what questions you still have. We read every single comment. Everyone. Ashley Flynn. We will not forget her name.